Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Agoracom, in which we take the time to speak with CEOs to go further in depth into their important press releases. Today, we're taking a closer look at a historic lawsuit that could shake the financial world. Quantum BioPharma, a biopharmaceutical company that was once valued at nearly $1 billion, is now taking legal action against two of the largest banks in North America, CIBC and RBC, alleging a massive scheme of stock price manipulation. The company claims its stock was artificially driven down, wiping out investor value and derailing its growth. The alleged tool, spoofing, a market manipulation tactic where traders place and then quickly cancel orders to create the illusion of demand or supply in order to manipulate the price of a security to profit from it. Now, Quantum BioPharma is fighting back, seeking over $700 million in damages. In this exclusive interview, we sit down with Quantum BioPharma CEO and Co-Chairman Zeeshan Saeed, as well as Jason Sawyer, Head of Finance and M&A, to explore the impact of this alleged manipulation, the strength of the case, and what it all means for the future of this company and its investors. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, George.
Good Appreciate it, George. Great to be here.
Zeeshan, both of you guys, Thank you for sitting down with us today. This lawsuit is a significant step for Quantum BioPharma and its shareholders. Before we dive deeply into the legal details, let's walk us through the initial journey. When did you first start to suspect that something wasn't right with the way your stock was being traded?
We did not know anything specific until recently, George, honestly, with the help of some industry experts and law firms. Recently, we find out who was doing it.
It must have been shocking to realize your stock was being manipulated, because in your press release you state the banks and their customers or their customers use spoofing to manipulate your stock price. So let's expand a little bit on this and your theory on why they would even do this.
Well, there is only one reason in my view, and that is to make money. Through these methods, they make sure that the price of the stock goes down for them or their customers.
Spoofing is what you guys are claiming specifically. I gave a small definition there in my introduction, but help our audience understand what spoofing actually looks like in practice. Like, how are these banks allegedly using it to impact your share price?
So I'm not any expert on spoofing, but the way I understand is that they post a lot of fake orders. That it could be buy or sell, either side. So for example, if they want to depress the price, they'll offer a lot of sell orders with no intent of fulfilling them. And this, to my surprise, is done in microseconds. We saw instances in the data that the experts analyzed that hundreds of orders were put in less than a second and taken off. But that's how it's done.
Yeah, and I know from, unfortunately, this is a widespread issue that isn't unique to you guys. You're the first that's taken action on this. But yeah, I can tell you I have clients who tell me, a client just told me last week, somebody wanted to come in and buy a couple of million shares near the end of the day, and immediately a big sell order for twice that size was put on and then taken off 10 seconds later. And also, so unfortunately, it does happen all the time. There are other forms of stock market manipulation. So have you identified any other forms of manipulation against this, or is spoofing the primary one?
That we are engaged in a lawsuit, so we have experience, I think, several forms, and not necessarily we cannot necessarily say who it is because we have no proof. But at one point, there were people going and posting negative reviews on our company. And this guy was posting on sites like Yahoo Finance and Stockwatch and other financial sites 5 times a day for years, for months, with no end in sight. I don't have time to go and post about my company on sites 5 times a day. So we assume that these people are paid. Besides that, negative reports by analysts come out. We were subject to a class action lawsuit. All these techniques are very elaborate techniques that help in depressing the stock price
Yeah,
of
and
the company.
you're not alone, guys. Just today, Elon Musk had a favorable outcome with the SEC over some posts he had made years ago about Tesla, but he talked about the fact that none of the short sellers who used these kind of tactics against Tesla to drive his stock price down back then, he says, I finally have ended my battle, but none of these guys even were even brought to battle in the first place. So you're not alone, but that begs this question. Before you went the lawsuit route, gents, did you actually contact any banks or brokers to alert them to the issue and then say, hey, we need some remedies here? Because usually people don't dive right into a massive lawsuit like this. I'd be curious to know if you reached out to any of the banks or brokers.
I did send specifically to CIBC screenshots of in the last 2 seconds, there would be 30 or over 50 or last 2 minutes, I mean, sell orders. And that could only be used to depress the price. So I did send them and I begged them to have this, whoever is using their system, their customers must be doing this to remedy the situation. I did contact the bank.
I'm going to ask, but I don't know if you can tell me anything, but did you get any response? Did they acknowledge it? Did they not even believe it? Said, hey, maybe you're just photoshopping these things. Hey, can you tell
I
us anything
got
about the response?
it was like, they were giving me very circumlocutory responses. Nothing was resolved. In fact, it felt like the stock was sold even more ferociously, like a slap on the face for even asking the bank, something like that.
Next logical step before a lawsuit for me after that would be, did you contact the regulators to, again, alert them to the issue and maybe have them assist in remedying the situation?
So, George, with the regulators, I have nothing but good things to say about them. All regulators, especially the OSC. They have been very responsive. They have been very prompt in all communications and all our inquiries, and I'll leave it to that.
All right. That's a pretty that I'd ask you more, but I understand that that's probably as far as you can go with that answer. Let me ask you, gents, and Jason, by the way, anytime you want to jump in, feel free. I know we're getting into your specialty in a little bit, but what kind of long term impact does this have on your ability to operate, the ability to finance the company so you can grow it? How much damage does this do?
It's been immeasurable, and as you mentioned earlier, this is widespread and it's systemic. So I would say that it is the thrust of the zeitgeist in micro cap discussions in North America right now. It's not 10 or 15, 20 or 100 companies. You're talking about 1,000 micro cap and nano cap companies that have been attacked by something entirely systemic that you can't, unless you're completely sophisticated. You have the capital markets, brokerage, the depth of experience in trading, which frankly, the vast majority of founders, CEOs, even the council and the ecosystem of service providers around companies don't have the experience. But I think it would probably be an understatement if I said that we've had 500 discussions between principals, large shareholders who've been affected by this in startups, high growth companies across the spectrum of industries, et cetera. And the effect on this is multifold. First of all, the vast majority of venture capital in Canada does not happen through institutional venture investment. It happens through accredited investors, retail investors in the market, and the natural progression of a broker, EMD, exempt market dealer, or some form of investment banker raising capital from an accredited investor. Trust has been destroyed because it's making that ecosystem look like it doesn't work. How can every single company with very few exceptions, that are a part of this Canadian nano-cap ecosystem that's existed and driven so much value in mining over the decades, and moving into biotech and into tech and everything that we've experienced now. In the cannabis run-up, where granted valuations were at times out of control, but there is a natural supply-demand imbalance that's been destroyed, and the trust of the average person, the average professional, accredited investor, writing that $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 check if they have the net worth and the status to make such an investment, end up in the public markets, and they're trying to figure out how this has become inexplicable. Their brokers can't explain it to them. Their wealth managers can't explain it to them. It's almost every single company run by noted entrepreneurs who've raised tens and hundreds of millions of dollars for worthy projects. The effect for the company with an artificially depressed share price, first of all, if you don't have full-time IR to take those 50, 100, 500 calls a week saying, you know, what's wrong with the company? What's happened here? You just put out incredibly positive news. The momentum should be going the other way. I mean, that's a full-time job for somebody, and it's incredibly distracting to a founder, to an operator. In our case, trying to build an R&D focused biotech company, good for humanity, good for the markets, tremendous promise. And you end up with severely diminished opportunities to finance the company. And when you're an early stage company, again, Canada's venture capital ecosystem is 95% driven by the mid-market banks, the brokers, the risk-taking accredited investors, and confidence has been destroyed, and no one seems to want to explain what's happened. And we all understand it, and now we have hundreds of CEOs, C-level execs, the lawyers around them, some of the broker dealers in good faith talking about, we know this is a problem. It's destroyed not tens, but hundreds of billions of dollars of value, because we have to think of the net effect of employment, et cetera.
Save Canadian Mining says between $500 billion and $1 trillion.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about that and the effect on an economy like Canada, Save Canadian Mining, all of the companies in technology and biotech, and all of the great young companies who've seen their access to capital destroyed because there's no natural supply demand. And we all know it. George, you've been in this industry for a long time. I have been as well.
Shame.
There are plenty of natural sellers of stock once a company's made its way through its high risk, whether it's a drill program or it's those phase 1 clinical trials or any other aspect of what early stage companies go through. Let them hand that stock off naturally, whether they're up or down when the company lists. But
2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, one. That's the natural when things go right. That stair step growth that you get in your market cap and your share value, so you can acquire the companies, raise money, and all that's been shattered.
Yeah, exactly. And the amalgam of bad actors out there that we're still identifying take advantage of the liquidity and the interest in the stock. Liquidity has to be present, and they capitalize on that through being very sophisticated and having the capital and the relationships to effectively sell something or create a synthetic market that should not otherwise exist.
Well, before I move on to the magnitude of damages, because the great thing is a lot of people hearing your answer, Jason, might be putting up their hands saying, well, what's the point? But you guys are fighting back. You're the tip of the spear. We're going to talk about that in a second, but there'll be a lot of other companies I think that are going to be coming in behind you. But when I talk to my friends, for the people who are watching or listening, if you're driving your car, when I talk to my friends, say, I don't exactly get it. How does this work? I said, well, imagine we're all playing poker. And the rules of poker is you play with whatever money you have in front of you, table stakes. But imagine if I'm the one guy, everyone's got, $500 in front of them, and we're trying to play poker against each other, but I have this fire hose of chips I can just keep bringing on the table, and I can just put you all in because I got 10,000 all in, 10,000 all in. Sooner or later, you're going to say, I just can't fight this. George is playing me. He's playing me unfair, and he's playing me with unlimited stack that crushes me. So I can't play this game anymore. So that's what. Now let's talk, guys, about the magnitude of damages, how you got to it. So at one point, your stock was trading at over $460 a share. Now that's obviously split adjusted, and now it's trading in the $5.5, $6 range. Okay, that's obviously a massive drop of equity proportions. Your lawsuit seeking $700 million in damages. How did you guys ballpark? Again, I'm not looking for a detailed analysis, but how did you arrive at that number, $700 million?
It was really the expert, and the $700 million is US dollars, and it's a conservative estimate by that expert. So we'll leave the damages for them to assess, but the stock price that it came down has destroyed lives, in my opinion. There are people who I know whose whole savings have been wiped out. I invested, my mother, father invested, everybody invested. Uh, People are not speaking to me. I had to remove my answering machine from my phone because I was getting really bad threats and messages all the time because of what's happening to the stock price. Um, so there we are. We are going to fight back and seek justice for our shareholders.
George, I think at one time, this was a very widely held stock, and the number of people who've suffered damage here, and stocks go up and down, early stage companies succeed, fail to succeed. Again, we're talking about the natural order of the markets here, but there are tens of thousands of people who likely lost more than they should have, lost when they should have won, and made money on a trade or their investment in the company. So we're not talking about 500 or 1,000 people here. At one time, there were over 100,000 shareholders in the company. So we're doing our best now to engage and interact with them, and starting to get more and more stories, all of which we're beginning to document, because those $1,000 losses and $1 million losses and everything in between that happened thousands of times, there are a lot of important, poignant stories there that if we don't get this straightened out soon in this market, I don't know if the bureaucracies and the things that surround, govern, and control the markets that we participate in have actually done the math on what happens if this isn't fixed. We understand the productivity problem widely in macroeconomic terms. We understand that the liquidity in the microcap markets has, and probably to a large degree in the last couple of years, dried up because of things like this. If this market goes away, this is the $500 billion that Terry talks about. When we look at that in a 10-year perspective, will seem like chump change.
Yeah. And by the way, a lot of the investors that you're talking about, Jason, and a lot of people watching and listening who don't quite know the Quantum BioPharma name, everybody remembers FSD Pharma because your stock symbol was huge, HUGE back then. And it was a great story. I had friends in the deal who had been the private placement, and they were confident in the future of the company, and they're doing great, and said, hey, I'm not going to touch the stock for 2, 3, 4 years. I'm going to just let it grow because I believe in its growth. And unfortunately, they had their dream shattered, and it wasn't done fairly. So we're going to talk a little more about your investor strategy in a section. In a second, what I want to talk about is your legal strategy. You've got two prominent law firms here, Krishnatar and Friedman Norman Friedland, and it seems like they're the ones who have gathered the evidence. They're the ones. It's not just Zeeshan, Jason, a couple of guys who are complaining here, and they're throwing spaghetti in the wall to see what sticks. What can you tell us, Zeeshan, about the investigative process that led to this lawsuit and the quantifying of damages, and how long did it take? Because again, you're just not throwing something on the wall to see what sticks.
Process took many, many months, George, and a lot of industry experts were called. Data was collected from several sources. They took a lot of time, and hence the data is pretty compelling that we have. And hence these law firms have decided to take this case on contingency. They believe it's a strong case. Christian Attar has been doing this for the last 2 decades. Friedmans are very, very competent in what they do. So we are very happy with the law firms behind us.
You said something there that might have been missed. They're taking on contingency. So from what I understand, you paid the first fee of the investigative process. You have to pay them to get their experts to do all the analysis. It's taken over a year from my calculation, but now that they've come to their conclusion from their analysis, from here on in, they're taking this case on a contingency basis, which means they don't get paid unless you're successful. What should investors read into that in terms of providing them with some level of comfort, confidence, optimism? Nothing's guaranteed, obviously, about the chance of you guys prevailing when they take it on. This is Aaron Brockovich, right? If anybody doesn't, Aaron Brockovich took that case on contingency because they knew they're going to be successful, made a ton of money out of it because their clients made a ton of money. What should shareholders read into this?
That should speak volumes about the strength of the case. Law firms know that they are going to go against these banks, which are going to put tens of hundreds of lawyers against them. The cost will be astronomical. For them to take on this challenge shows that the case is pretty strong, in our view, against these banks.
What I also like about this is, I'm a lawyer by training. A lot of people don't know that, but I'm a graduate of Osgoode Hall Law School and went to the bar and all that. But Canadian courts don't bite as hard as U.S. courts. You filed this in the U.S. District Court of the Southern District of New York, SDNY. If you watch Billions or Law and Order, you're probably very familiar with that. If you've been following, Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto cases, they're all there because that's known for handling major financial cases. What's the significance of filing it there for you guys? How does it impact? How does it further increase the potential success of your lawsuit?
Actually, hit it right on the dot, George. So the New York, there's no better place than to file cases like this in New York. The judges now have seen several cases, especially related to spoofing. It will be hard to explain to a newer judge or newer court system than any other than New York, we believe so. And we want to bring it into the defendant's backyard. They use their counterparts in US to do all this.
How have your shareholders reacted to the news of the lawsuit, Zeeshan? Because I would figure, they were pretty down, destitute. You get disillusioned, and you're the first company that I know of that's put together a major. I mean, this $700 million. What's the reaction been like from your shareholders?
Shareholders feel happy. They've been congratulating us. They want us to succeed. I think they'll feel vindicated. We'll all feel vindicated if we are successful in this case, getting somewhere. And we hope that we also help in stopping these practices in the future and having others like us getting affected from these.
Jason, if I'm a former shareholder of the company, a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever the timeline is, and I feel like I've potentially been damaged by this, what do I do? Do I just sit back and wait for you guys to finish this and hope someone's going to contact me? Or how do investors get proactive to get involved in this process, or at least have their voices heard and maybe even have their damages listed somewhere?
Yeah, firstly, just to respond to your earlier question, it's been invigorating for a lot of shareholders. We've had a lot of former shareholders and remaining shareholders existing reach out and support the effort to thwart this. First of all, to fix it for the shareholders who've been damaged, and obviously to attempt to thwart it for the benefit of the entire ecosystem of young companies that are trading in the public market to whom this is happening. And so we're going to be posting on the site a form where shareholders who have been damaged can come and can register with us. We want to hear from them in as much detail as possible. We want the share numbers. We want the dates. We want the dollar figures. We want to understand in full detail the harm that they suffered through this practice. And that's going to help us continue to build momentum toward our goal, which is obviously seeing that the claim is heard and dealt with in the proper light, and ultimately doing our part to stop this in the entire industry.
And by the way, we would also like to hear from, so once they've gone through you, and I'm assuming you're going to announce that in a future press release or something like that, Jason, so
That's
people
our
will know where to
intention.
go.
Yeah, it won't be too long from now. We will.
So, on our end too, what we'd like is once people have gone through that process and verified themselves and provide you guys with whatever info you're going to request in the forms, we'd like to have a dozen or maybe a couple of dozen more of investors here on Agoracom and let them each have 2 or 3 minutes just to talk and hear their stories. Because this is going to be really important. This is a milestone case here, and it's not just the dollars, but it's the public pressure that we can all put on the banks, the brokers, and the system. And sometimes, we see a lawsuit for $700 million. I mean, in the US, we hear that, the debt's going up $1 trillion every 90 days or something. So people get lost in the numbers. It's important for us to bring those numbers to life when we talk to Bob or Mary, Helen or Doug or John or whoever the case is to talk about their story. So, if you're a shareholder of the company and you go through the process, make sure you make stuff available. We want to hear your voice. I just want to put that out there. Last thing I want to talk about, with two things I want to talk about. The broader implications of this beyond Quantum BioPharma. So we've already talked about Save Canadian Mining. Okay, thanks to our common friend Terry Lynch, who's a co-founder, and he's got a great group there. They're the short selling advocacy group that includes the likes of Eric Sprott, Rob McEwen, Keith Newmeyer, and a whole bunch of other great people there. The unfortunate part is they're there because this kind of market manipulation is on the rise, targeting small caps like Quantum. Do you think your case sets a precedent for other companies to move forward the same way, and or even potentially a big class? Terry and the group has been talking about a major class action lawsuit. How do you see the ripples going on beyond for you?
So Terry is a great guy. He's doing a great job, and we literally respect and love Terry. There are numerous cases before us, and several will come after us, George. We've been already contacted by several companies to tell us how we're doing it, how it's done. We hope to get rid of this cancer and not let these bullies beat up every day, so we can do something good for the shareholders and the company. But as far as class action or other things, I cannot comment at this time. We need to get to discovery before that can be answered. But we want the shareholders to get involved.
On that note, what's the timeline? Again, lawsuits can vary in timelines, but what should shareholders expect in terms of progress over the next 6 to 12 months? When do you think you get to discovery? Discovery is when you get to sit down and ask them questions directly. Ballpark, when do you think we'll start to see movement there?
So again, I'm no expert, but what I've been told is that the banks most certainly will file a motion to dismiss. That can take anywhere between 9 to 15 months. Once we get past that, and hopefully we will win that motion, then we'll get into discoveries. So in that time range, I will say the discoveries will come.
All right. Looking forward, Jason, I want to ask you this question because there's reason to believe there's going to be some success here. And it's only a case of degree of success. But assuming Quantum BioPharma is successful in this lawsuit and you guys receive some or all of your damages, what do you think that means for the future of the company? How do what do you do with those funds? How much of that goes back into recapitalize the company? How much potentially do you use for M&A? How much do you even potentially dividend some money? And you don't have to give me specific answers, but I guess I'm trying to, what do we tell the shareholders there about how things turn around if and when you're successful here?
Yeah, in terms of success with the suit. In the meantime, we have a business to run and are making all of the progress that we want to make right now on our two platforms in the market. That alone has tremendous promise, and obviously this has become a part of the day-to-day existence of the company. That this battle has to be fought, and that winning the battle could result. Obviously, we know what the claim, the number of the claim is, which Zeeshan has accurately described as conservative. But if anything like that were to happen, what does a small company building the two or commercializing the two platforms that we're currently working on and the capital needs we have for operations? We're well capitalized in that regard right now. What do you do with that level of cash? And the answer would have to be, how long does it take to play out? What is the result of the claim? And ultimately, what are the company's capital needs at that point in time to continue positive developments in our main line of business, research and development, commercialization of drugs and consumer products that are unique and innovative? And obviously, if we're able to put a dent in that number at all with a successful legal victory here, in simple terms, it's going to work out extraordinarily well for shareholders. And we only hope that the people who've been damaged over the course of the evolution of FSD Pharma and into Quantum BioPharma now are able to benefit from that, past, present, and future. People looking at the company right now and saying, is it investable and why? This is one of the reasons, that it is. It's just it's had to become kind of the company's third line of business pursuing this, and a successful outcome would be very positive for everybody in dollars and cents.
It's the third line of business because you're forced into it by their line of business. So you might as well be part of it, right?
That's right. We'd prefer to be running an innovative biotech company right now and doing the things that we all have fun doing, and all the natural challenges that exist in that for entrepreneurs, which everybody listening here as an Agoracom follower would be well aware of. We'd rather that's the case, but we've taken this on and we're going to see it through to completion and hopefully fruition.
Well, in this third leg of the business, I hope you guys get 100% of your damages, plus, plus, plus. But I hope you guys get $700 million. I hope you guys keep $500 million with the business, distribute $200 million to shareholders so we can all celebrate it. That's obviously and I'm not just wishing that just for you guys, but man, all kidding, 100% seriousness, that would send shockwaves through the banks and brokers to put an end to this practice once and for all, and let companies like Quantum BioPharma rise or fall on their merits. Like you said earlier, Jason, natural buying, natural selling. Everyone's okay with selling. If George buys some stock at $5 and wants to sell it at 10, and Zeeshan wants to buy those shares at 10 because he thinks it's going to go to 20, let that happen. That's all we want for the microcap space. So I wish you guys great luck in that. Zeeshan, last words to you. And I know we covered a lot. For your shareholders watching this, what message would you like to send them today before we sign off?
Thank our shareholders for having all this patience with us. And I want them to know that we're working in all directions. There is a lot of hope for this company, and we are still surviving. We do try to take care of our shareholders. We, as you know, gave a dividend out of a company called Selling Nutrition for free to all the shareholders. We are going to always take care of our shareholders and do our best to get the value that this company should receive.
Well, Zeeshan, I'll say this. I've been in this business for 27 years now. There are a lot of CEOs who will say those words, but the fact of the matter is you're not talking the talk, you're walking the walk, because not only did you distribute some funds back to your shareholders, but you went and initiated a $700 million lawsuit to fight for them. And I think that's great. I think you guys are courageous. I think you guys are pioneers. And this is not the last communication on this. This is the first, because you guys came out with this news. There's going to be a lot more interviews between us discussing all these things. And I want to thank both of you for coming on onto Agoracom to join us. We saw from this last U.S. federal election that investors want this kind of long form conversation. They don't want to hear canned 4-minute interviews. I think you guys have been awesome and sharing your expertise, sharing your thoughts and your vision. And I can't wait to have you guys back. And I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much, George. We appreciate your time.
To everybody at home, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Want to hear your comments on the Quantum BioPharma forum on Agoracom. Try saying that 5 times really fast. But thanks for joining us. Do us all a favor, not for Agoracom, for the company, for you. Like, comment, share this with your networks. Help us get the word out. We're going to do a lot, but it takes everybody. It takes a village to make these things happen. So share this with your networks. Comment, like, do all those great things. Thanks for joining us. Have an amazing day. See you next time.
Hey Small Cap fam, I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, we would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agoracom small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.